cussing at me. You hear how he cussed at me? Do you hear how he just cussed at me? You guys live didn't hear it. I know, but the people down in here in the show, they heard you cursing at me. Good day, thinkers, thought leaders, progressives, and dreamers. I'm Craig the Writer Stewart.
I'm Derek J.
And this is our third conversation.
Yes,
this is our third panel. And Derek remembered that May is Mental Health Awareness Month, which I'm glad he did. Mm-hmm. So we slipped in this conversation. Now, typically, we would not have been on tonight because we're every second Wednesday. Yes. Now, we will be on next week because, again, tonight we added this show on.
Because we felt it was quite important to talk about mental health and bringing awareness to it, because I think in the Black community and in the gay community, it's something that we don't really talk about, and it's just a conversation that we need to have. So we wanted to put this conversation together and make this happen. So in this space of mental health, you know, I personally don't think that I've ever went into any kind of mental health issues like depression or anything of that nature. But as I got older, I started to realize about being in a functioning depression.
Okay.
So I mean, like, so it's like, you know, you really don't think that you're really in one, and you think that you're okay, but really you are. And so I don't know if I've ever been in that space.
Well, I have. And when we were talking about putting this panel together, I shared with Derek, and I actually write about it in my first book. I was in a deep depression, but I wasn't medicated, there's nothing wrong with that if you need medication. By all means, do that. But I also was in a functional depression, and mine was triggered by a lack of movement in my career. I felt like my career, that I should have been further in my career and in my finances than I should have been. And I now understand, and I've learned that way of thinking is called magical thinking. And if you follow my live, I've talked about this before, and it's basically thinking, hoping, wishing, and thinking that your life should be any different than it is. And so for me, my depression was triggered by that. I thought that I could force the current. I thought that I could force movement in my career. And because it didn't happen when I wanted it to happen, I got frustrated. And so that was what happened. But like you said, I was in a functional depression. Most people didn't really recognize it. So looking back, that's the things that's scary to me, because people closest to me didn't recognize it. Now, there were periods in that depression that I was in a relationship. And I remember him saying to me, and I will never forget that. I remember him saying to me, he said, "Why is it that when we're around other people, you seem to come to life? But when you're around me, it's like you're just really down and you're like really blue." You know, and the thing is, the answer to it is, are we frozen? Oh God.
We over here on Craig's internet, y'all.
Are you guys? We've been having issues with the internet all day. Can you guys still see us? Is it moving? Can you guys still see us? Check the, oh my God. Let's see. I don't know if it's still, we've been having issues. I mean, it was storming all day today, so I don't know if it was. You said yours was cutting up today, too.
I never said.
Can you guys hear us?
I would never say mine was cutting up.
Oh my God. It looks like people are still in there. Where are you?
I don't know. Look at our videos. Oh, wait.
Go over to, oh my God. Right there. Click that one. Click on this. Oh God, here's the
calls for new financial.
They say yes, we can see you.
Y'all can? Y'all can see us?
Resources on top.
Okay, hold on. Well, we got
unemployment.
Be quiet, girl.
Okay, loud ass phone.
Right. Okay, we don't know what's happening right here.
Okay, they can still see us. Okay, well, put this up so we can see each other.
Right. Because when we see it right now, y'all.
Oh my God, it's a mess.
It's a mess.
I don't even know what I was saying at that point, but I remember him saying that you seem to come to life when you're around other people, and around me, you're blue. But I understand now that because he was the closest person to me, we lived together, so I wasn't able to mask it. I was able to mask it for the times that I was around friends, and we were out because they didn't see me all the time. But yeah, so we wanted to have this conversation. We wanted to extend it to you because the reality is mental illness isn't, or mental health isn't just encompassed by depression, but it's also bipolar disorder. There are a range of things. So we want to hear from you guys, and we want to hear from some of you about your experiences. Now, we have a mental health therapist here that we want to bring on first, because with all of the conversations that we've done, we've been trying our best to have a subject matter expert to frame the conversation so that we bring credibility to each of these conversations. All right.
This is stressing me.
This is really stressing me.
So
let me see if I. Oh my God.
Okay. Well, click her up and let's make sure that kind of happens.
Hey, fellas. I can see you and hear you. Yes. Yes.
Can you see us?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, because we have a green screen over here. But
yes, V-neck is looking good. Yes. I can see yes.
Okay, well, please introduce yourself to us.
Absolutely. So I'm Jawanda McNair. I have been in mental health all of my adult career, and I've co-owned a therapy agency for the last 10 years. So I do want to add in there, I'm what you consider a QMHP, a qualified mental health professional. I'm not a licensed therapist. However, I got the education, a bachelor's degree, and I've been in this industry a long time. So just to help kind of frame the conversation, we work with children and families at our agency. We do a gambit of services. We touch on everything from domestic violence, anger management, of course, good old therapy. We work with children a lot, and we work also with children in their natural environments. We go to home, we go to school, and in communities to do services. So the story for me often starts in childhood, because we're all wearing the residue of our childhood. And it's really important that our childhood, that we're able to get the things that we need. So with kids are at the mercy of their circumstance, whatever their parents' social coping skills were, whatever those patterns and behaviors were that they're displayed for us, those are the things that we picked up. So the way that we communicate, the way that we cope, all of those things are patterns, they're repetitions. Even mental illness is a pattern of behavior. It's a pattern of behavior that makes you unsuccessful, that makes you unhappy. So with children, it usually starts in childhood. We look at trauma. Those are things that we need to acknowledge. And I'm gonna touch on what you mentioned, Craig, in a second, because I suffer from a little bit of that as a type A, that situational, magical thinking stuff. Yeah. But with children, we want to look at trauma. Have you been abused? Have you been neglected? Were you nurtured? Were you cared for? Did you witness violence, domestic violence? Community violence? Were you poor? Were you impoverished and had a lack of resources or medical care? We type of things and how they ultimately affect you as you begin to grow. So we realize that kids that don't get what they need, they often blossom and grow. And those type of disorders, the things like bipolar and depression, again, continue to manifest. So we usually start off with kids. We think about, what if we were all able to get what we needed in our childhood to be stable. So life events, again, impact us, divorce, all those things. Some people have a predisposition, so we need to keep that in mind. There is heredity. Some people, it does run in families, mental illness. There is something to that. About 1 in 5 people are mentally ill. So it is very likely in any given household that you're going to be living with someone or engaging with someone that has mental illness. A lot of us may pick up on these things in relationships, and you alluded to that, Craig. When you're around someone long enough, you get to know their patterns, you get to know their ebbs and flows, their ups and downs. And what you want to see is a balance. And when there's any extreme to that, you think about bipolar and manic depression. When people are manic, when they're spending a lot, when they're making poor choices, when they're drinking too much, when they're being promiscuous, versus when they're depressed, they can't get out of the bed, they can't go to work, they can't focus. We want to make sure, again, that there's a balance. So we look at those patterns of behaviors and we try to begin there and address those. So for me, it all starts in childhood, and then we start to create treatment plans for people. We need to be very purposeful. Again, we talk a lot in our culture about sticks and stones don't hurt us, words don't hurt us, and they do. Most of us, we don't need to be perfect, but again, we need to be purposeful, and we need to be conscious and aware, thoughtful of our words with children. But then again, like I said, as you continue to grow, that trauma, that dysfunction can continue to manifest in your life, and you just get in a cycle and a pattern of behaviors and activities that don't mean you well.
And
Um,
I just wanted to ask, do you have any experience working with LGBTQ children or LGBT
yes,
people?
yes, we actually transgendered youth, gender confusion, things of that nature. Absolutely, we work with those kids as well. We try to help them to basically find their authentic self, to feel comfortable with themselves and to find their niche in the world. But that's a whole nother topic right there with being gay, lesbian, or transgendered, and the rest of the alphabet. Being Black and gay specifically, because that's my experience, was not something that was accepted. I was raised in New Jersey, but I was raised in a Southern Baptist household. And again, those two things did not mix. They were not okay. And so it wasn't supported. And so that's where I can tie in even some of the issues that I faced, with having anxiety and having depression. When have a soil that is not conducive or supportive of you, then again, that can cause you to get into patterns of behavior and thinking, suicide and all those things of that nature. And hey, guys, I don't see you right now. I'm not sure if y'all can still hear me. But I'll just continue to talk until you popped up. So again, being trauma informed, of course, trauma is important. We need to understand it. Again, we know about medical trauma, but we need to appreciate mental health trauma. And for me, again, these things, witnessing the suffering, witnessing drug abuse, speaking with my friends, families, and other people who've been abused, neglected, molested, things of those natures.
Can you hear us now?
I can, yes.
Oh my God,
Okay,
we completely dropped out.
But we back now.
Oh my God.
No worries. So no, just the beginnings of trauma, PTSD, understanding how different from day to day, being able to cope with life, being able to cope, Craig, with things like not achieving those milestones when you think you should be achieving them. There's a saying, you shouldn't should on yourself. And I'm very much a victim of that. I felt like at 30, I'm supposed to have it together. Like everything is going to be in place. By 40, I'm going to be good to go. And so those are things that can play tricks on your mind as well. So it's really about having some stability, being able to cope. I'm sure some of the other therapists that you have may be able to add a little bit more into that. But I just added, when we went out, I was just saying, being you asked me about the LGBT community. I myself am a lesbian, and so I am Black and gay. And I realized that the two of those don't always go together. I was raised in a Southern Baptist home, and so it was not appreciated that I wanted to be different. It was not supported. It was not a soil where I felt nurtured. And so when I was younger, I very much experienced anxiety. And the cousin of anxiety, the friend of anxiety, is depression. It goes hand in hand. When you feel uncomfortable, when you're not settled, that makes you sad, and that goes even farther into suicide and all of those things.
And I think
Mhm.
people of color, I think that sometimes like we suffer as marginalized people, especially
Yes.
we fall below the poverty level, because I just think even when I was struggling, trying to get to this point in my career, I remember being exhausted mentally. I think that was also how I described my depression at the time. I was mentally exhausted with trying to figure out how to make it through the next week, the next month, the next year financially, and still try to follow my path as a writer. And I just think that even when you're not an entrepreneur or an artist, when you're just trying to survive and you're a single parent, you have multiple children, and you're trying to figure out how to take care of them and pay for childcare and pay for food. And, I just think that can sometimes lead to some sort of a depression.
No, it can. I think circumstances. Some people are predisposed, and like I said, some people it's hereditary. Some people it's circumstances and situations. And I think any of us can be in a situation that throws us into a depression. We got coronavirus going on out here. You know what I mean? Someone can be shot and killed. Any of those things can throw us into a spiral. But that goes back to now. Part of being mentally healthy and well is understanding coping, understanding stress management, understanding that there are resources out there, understanding that you need to ask for help. You know, you mentioned about being unmedicated. I imagine somehow, some way you found your way back to the center. But, you know, reaching out for help. Here we go about the shame of mental illness. 1 in 5 of us is mentally ill. Most of us know people who are mentally ill. You can identify patterns of behavior in people's life that is like you're constantly keeping that storm going. You know what I mean? You're constantly spinning you around. And that's the thing with, I went back to trauma. If you never address your traumas or you never get the skills to cope effectively, you're going to constantly be in that cycle and in that storm. You know, so.
I want to move to one of the other panelists that we have here. So we're going to come back to you. So definitely stick around.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I want to go to Mark.
Okay.
I actually know Mark, and Mark posted. I should have asked you to have your the post that you did on Instagram. I should have asked you to have that handy to read a piece from that. Yeah. But I found out that Mark was suffering from. Would you say it was a depression, or how would you classify it?
Yeah, definitely would call that depression.
Depression. Through his Instagram. He did a post on his Instagram, and I don't usually read like those long posts. It pulled me in from like the first sentence. So maybe at some point before this evening is over, you can pull it up. But yeah, that was how I found out. And I texted him and I let him know that I had also went through a depression at one point. And, you know, because I know that he's an entrepreneur and I know what he's trying to do. So I want you to kind of share your experience and how you came through that.
Oh, yeah, definitely. First and foremost, thank you for having me. And I think this is a really good topic that we need to constantly have just to take away that shame, as your previous guest was saying. With me, I'm not going to say I'm completely done with depression. I feel like every day it's a battle. You know what I'm saying? Once you open up that door for it, I feel like it's always lingering there. I actually just texted my doctor this morning for us to try out some different medication because I don't feel as if the one that I was prescribed is actually working. But with my whole thing, as she was saying earlier, she hit so many nuggets. My mother is schizophrenic. So I've always been aware of her mental illness, but I never thought that it would happen to me. You know, I thought that was just something like, that's her business. That I'm a super positive, always upbeat, always happy type of person. So when it happened to me, I didn't necessarily recognize it as depression. I just thought I was having like a little, you know, just a sad wave, or a few things happened to me and I was just sad. But when it began to linger to the point that I did not want to get up out the bed, to the point where I'm thinking about, what if I'm not alive? Do I really matter to people? Do people really care about me? You know, when you start having those thoughts, and it's almost as if you know people care, but it's like something inside of your mind that's telling you they don't care. And you know people love you, you know people want you around, but it's still something inside of you that's saying you don't matter. With me, the person that I am a motivator. I am an encourager by nature. So when people that fall into that category go into a depression, it's kind of, what can I say? It's different for people like us, because people only give you a short span of time to recover from any downfalls, because you got to get back to being healthy so that you can continue to encourage them. So even when I let people know that I was going through something, I was getting these cheesy messages of, you know, you just got to bounce back. You just got to shake it off. And I'm like, it's not that easy. It's not easy as going in church and doing a turnaround dance and touching your neighbor and tapping your neighbor and running around. And that became very real to me when none of those methods worked for me. And my whole thing was, it was very embarrassing. It was embarrassing to tell people. I felt weak as a man. I felt that maybe there's something wrong with me because seemingly nobody else is going through experiences similar to this. So it was just one of those like aha moments. And what depression does do to you that I want to bring up is that it shakes your confidence. It lingers over your shoulder. And it's always reminding you that I can grab you again. And that's been my reality. I'm fighting. I'm continuously fighting. I haven't given up, But my reality, if I be very honest and vulnerable, is that it lingers. It's there. Days that I don't feel like doing something or I don't feel like pushing through, that depression lingers over me, saying I can always come back. Like it's just one of those things for me. I think for African Americans, we should definitely have therapists. I have a therapist. I think we should, if medication is needed, I think we should definitely seek that out. And another thing I'll add is that when I went to do research on medication, I found probably 2 people that had like YouTubes about antidepressant. Everybody else was white. So what that told me was that there was very few people that could even relate to my experience as an African American man, because if we be honest, our experiences with life is totally different from our counterparts. So there were very few people to give language to what I was experiencing. Not only did I need to seek a therapist, which I got, but now I'm trying to figure out, do I need to take medication? What's the side effects of this medication? How long do I need to take it? What's the experience going to be like? Am I going to be always upbeat? I wanted that information, and unfortunately, there wasn't enough people that looked like me to get a clear understanding of what I was entering into. So now I've decided to be that voice for people.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
So, how does it? Because, like for me, like the household I was raised up in, my mother she's a police officer. She works really hard. We don't really have time to be depressed. So, for somebody like me, if I had a friend like you in that state, how does it make you feel when a person don't really understand? It's like, child, that's all made up. That's in your head. Get over it. Because to me, I don't understand what that feels like. I don't understand what that is, because I've always been taught that you work through it, whatever you're going through.
And just to add to that, before you jump into that, Mark, that's the mindset that a lot of Black people have.
Yeah.
Christian Black folks. It's like, oh, just pray it away. Just pray about it. Take it to God.
Well,
right.
Pray. My mama said, just get the hell over it.
But it has a negative effect on you, because now you feel like something's wrong with you. You feel like out of the entire population of people, you're the only one experiencing this type of trauma. And it makes you feel like you're the weak one. I think because we don't have these conversations, and also because we don't have the language to depression, there's plenty of African Americans that are experiencing depression, but are calling it something else. Oh, I'm just tired. I'm just having a rough day. But you don't realize that there's been a series of these events, and now your lifestyle has changed. We don't identify with those things because of what you just said. Like, we all, in our minds, that can't happen to us. That's for other folks. That's for white folks. That's for the crazy folks. That's for them that's lazy. And even how I grew up, people that wanted to sleep all day, you're lazy. You're not depressed, you're lazy. You need to get a job. You especially for, I know Greg can probably relate to this, is that especially for entrepreneurs, when people can't see what you're building all the time and you have this passion, now people are telling you just go get a job. That's the problem. You need some money. Go get a job. So it's just one of those tough spaces to be in, of trying to fulfill purpose and then fight against internal and external demons.
Well, I want to say thank you very much for your insight. Mark, we're going to drop you back down because we have one of our special guests just popped into the room that I want to have a quick conversation with.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
All right. Stay around, though.
Okay.
So I want to bring up Shanti Dawes, who has an organization called Silence to Shame, that tackles and deals with mental health and mental health awareness. And, I really want to bring her on because I think that we don't really know that we have resources. And like Mark was saying, is that he didn't see a Black person speaking about it.
Right.
So,
and to your point, and I was going to say that Taraji P. Henson has a foundation. And part of the reason her father suffered from it, and then part of the reason that she wanted to start this foundation is because when she was trying to have conversations with her son and her own issues, there weren't therapists that looked like us.
So let's pop up Shanti. Hey,
Hi.
Shanti. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
No, thank you. No, thank you for being here. So, we had a couple of people that kind of popped up before we came on to kind of talk about their experience with mental health and dealing with depression and those things. But I want to really talk to you because you have an organization that is centered around this.
Yes. So I have, well, first of all, thank you again for having me on. The name of the organization is Silence the Shame Incorporated. And our sole purpose is to empower and educate communities around mental health, particularly communities of color. I heard the last gentleman talk about, how we don't talk about it in our families. My dad, Derek, took his own life when I was 7 months old.
Oh,
My
wow.
best friend took her own life in 2014, and we have had several family members that have suffered from either schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. And, for a long time, we didn't talk about it. I hate that the stigma is still so, heavy in our communities. And I think because of COVID-19, a lot of people are experiencing anxiety even for the first time, and they're not able to recognize it. And so now mental health is really becoming a topic that I think is something that's going to be here to stay. And it's great that we're starting to normalize it, but we got to take that step and get the help if we need it. Like the last young man said, sometimes, you might have a friend or family member who's sleeping all day, or you might have a child that's acting out. And, the neighbors, the teachers, everybody calling that child bad. Yes, some kids are bad, but some kids, right, it could be trauma. And it's manifesting in a way that they're acting out, right? So let's really peel back those layers and really find out from a family therapist or group sessions, what's going on with the spouse, what's going on with the child. Let's call it what it is. We got to stop putting band-aids on these situations, and we got to stop making excuses when people suffer from real life traumatic experiences.
Now, I know you come from the music industry, and I know that was a go industry, right?
Yep.
So you come from that world. So I know that you had suffered from some mental health issues. How did you recognize it? How did you know that's what's going on? Because when we're constantly pushing through, you just never know that you're going through anything.
Exactly. I was #team no sleep like everybody else, and living out of a suitcase, going from nightclub to party to dinner, back to the office. And I was just on this vicious cycle, if you will. I think the first time I recognized my own anxiety and depression was in 2001. I had just moved to New York City after LaFace Records was sold, and I was in more of a corporate environment, and it was a bit of a toxic environment for me. And my boss at the time was always yelling. He was very condescending. I wasn't eating. My face was breaking out. I didn't feel my value anymore. It was just a lot going on. And I didn't even have a release. Back then, self-care and wellness wasn't a thing. We weren't talking about it at all. And I kind of got to a breaking point, and I uttered the words, maybe I should just kill myself. And that was the first time. And I knew then that I had not really properly dealt with why my dad had taken his own life, even though he didn't leave a note. I didn't unpack those layers of trauma from my childhood. And I always thought that if, even as successful as I was, Derek, if things got hard for me, that I would consider that. So fast forward, I was executive vice president of marketing at Universal Motown Records, living my dream. So I thought, making several $100,000 a year, corner office, Range Rover, all of that great stuff. But I was stressed out to no end. I didn't, I didn't have any kind of personal outlets for myself. My mom developed Alzheimer's. I had a lot of loss in my family. And again, I didn't have a way to process through my emotions, and I wasn't seeing a therapist, and I just quit and came home. And then, a few years later, when my best friend took her own life, that was really the start of me going on a downward spiral. And I blamed myself for her death. And then, just everything was building up. It was like the perfect storm. And that's when in 2015, I had serious suicidal ideations. I had planned out my own funeral, and I was contemplating taking all the pills in my cabinet. And by the grace of God, I got the help that I needed. My pastor, Dr. Warnock in Atlanta, Georgia, was like, I'll pray with you, but you got to go to the doctor. And I just thought that was so profound because, again, as the other young man said on before me, we're told to pray our problems away, which is great. Prayer is always at the center of my life, okay? I wake up every morning in gratitude, but also I realized God gave people the wherewithal to go to therapists and the tools and doctors. And just like anything else in our communities, hypertension, high blood pressure, HIV, we go to the doctor when we need help. Why is it that when something is wrong with our mind, that we have an issue with it? Our brain is our largest organ in our body. And if you can't handle the words mental health, if that gives you the heebie-jeebies, then say brain wealth, brain health, whatever. Come up with your own term But we got to take care of our minds. We got to protect our minds, because if we don't protect our minds, we can't be productive and we can't lead the lives that we want to lead.
Now, how can we? So, what services does your organization offer, and how can they get part? How can they be a part of this?
So we do a lot of community conversations, which is just a fancier title for panel discussions. We do them around trauma, around PTSD, around just so many, a plethora of other things within the community. So you can sign up on our website to volunteer. You can reach out to us and ask us what community conversation or town hall that you would like for us to discuss. And we have a lot of clinicians that we work with throughout the country. We also do mental health first aid training, which is a free class. It's an 8-hour course where you learn all about the different mental illnesses, how to de-escalate a crisis. It's almost like taking a CPR course. And now with COVID-19, we're about to start offering those courses virtually, which is really great. Another thing that we did, we just recently raised some money in the month of May. So we're about to provide some free initial therapy sessions for nurses, just to kind of thank them, because it's a lot that they have to unpack with dealing with COVID-19. So about to start offering some free therapy sessions through a particular private practice here in Atlanta, Georgia. We do self-care Saturdays, which are 1-hour wellness activities, anything from hip hop yoga to Zumba to fitness exercises. So we do those on our IG Live. Prior to that, prior to COVID, we were doing them in person. So we're doing that. We do teen mental health summits, because we got to teach our babies and we got to get them to talk about their feelings. So we put together teen mental health summits and breakout sessions for the kids. And you guys can reach us at silencetheshame.com. We also have a podcast. We've interviewed over, a ton of people. We have over 30 episodes up on iTunes, Google Play, and SoundCloud. We interview celebrities, influencers, and clinicians. It's a really good one on there called Brothers Get Your Mind Right. And I would definitely encourage you to go check that one out, because oftentimes especially our Black men, we're taught that therapy is, might show a sign of weakness, or, men can't cry. And, I want to just erase all of those myths and let people know, like, it is okay to process through your emotions and your feelings. The worst thing you can do is keep those feelings bogged down inside. So you got to prioritize your relationships. So check out our podcast. And then I also do an IG Live called Yeah Wellness, where I interview celebrities. I've talked to everybody from Candy Burris to, Common, Swiss Beats, Tisha Campbell. And everybody's talking about, their own experience or their family members' experience with mental health. So hopefully these conversations are here to stay. Derek, I would love to, what I wanted to do prior to COVID was to do some mental health first aid trainings for hairstylists, right? Because you guys are almost therapists. And so I would love to talk to you about partnering and doing some work with a lot of the beauticians and barbers, and really trying to educate the community so that whether, once we do get past this, then we can safely start going back into the salons full speed ahead, that you guys are equipped to be able to provide information to your community.
Yeah, there was something that you said, Shanti, that I have in my notes here, because I wanted to mention this. You mentioned PTSD. I personally, as a Black gay man, have felt and believed for years that there's a PTSD that can happen, doesn't always happen, with being Black and gay and coming out of the closet.
Oh, sure.
That stress is predicated by, it depends on how your family receives you or not. And I think that sometimes complicates things, because there's a collective trauma, that trauma of being Black in this country and then being gay.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because last year we received a $50,000 grant from the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. And we did community conversations in about 5 cities across the nation around the double stigma of HIV and depression in the Black community. And I would love to even do something with you guys about it. I hate the fact that when certain people feel like, okay, this is my moment to be who I am, right? And to live in my moment of truth, that family members and friends are going to outcast you for something that they're uncomfortable about, right? That absolutely can lead to trauma. You know how many men and women have been living a lie, quote unquote, because they can't live their truth because they're embarrassed or ashamed or afraid? No longer can we do that. We don't know what we're doing to people's mental psyche, right? Just the constant like images of family members not letting them attend certain things, or being outcast from family functions, or friends, not really being okay with what you're doing. We got to let people live their lives, but more importantly, we have to be there to support one another. So we have to dispel these myths of trauma, whether it is around being Black, whether it's around being gay in your community. We have to learn to lead from a place of love and support. Let's stop outcasting people, and let's come from a place of inclusivity so that we can help one another thrive and be the people that we're supposed to be.
Now you guys see that down on the banner, we have her website here, silenceashame.com. And also, Shanti, I know that all this costs. So how can people donate to help your service out? And we'll make sure we put it on in the comments so people can know how to do that.
We appreciate it. So you can donate even $1. Our website literally has a section you can give $1. Okay. So you can go to silenceashame.com, or you can text the word silence to 707070. Okay. So 707. And then I also just want to leave, if you know anybody in your family or in your community, or anybody that's watching, if you feel like you're in crisis and you need to talk to somebody and you can't get to a therapist, there is a crisis text line organization that's amazing, and they can help de-escalate the crisis. So even if you get off this live and you're feeling anxious, you can text the word silence to 741-741, immediately be connected to a counselor. It's not in place of therapy, but there are people and counselors that can help you de-escalate the situation. It's free, it's confidential, nobody will know. So I just encourage you, if you need help, reach out to somebody, talk to somebody. Don't believe the hype. Let's dispel the myths. Let's stop saying that therapy is only for white people. And let's let people live their best lives. And let's get the help that we need so that we can move forward and protect our peace. Because at this point, with everything that's going on, we need to protect our peace in the world right now. And the only thing that's going to give us the peace is that we can wake up every day and be exactly who God meant for us to be. And there's people out there that can help us get through any kind of problems that we're going through. We just have to be open to getting the help.
Shanti, thank you so much. Text me both of them. Can you text them to me so I can put them in the comments and everything? And thank you for taking the time out tonight and explaining all that good information for us. I appreciate that.
And I look forward to doing some more work with you guys.
Yes, we're excited about
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shanti.
Thank you. All right, take care.
All righty.
Bye-bye.
And we're gonna come to some of the other guys that are waiting.
We're sorry. Yeah, we had to jump. We had to get that in real quick because she was on a tight spot. But I want to go because we have somebody here that's all the way in China.
Yes.
So
and he just got in from the club. It's 9 in the morning.
It's 9 in the morning there, so we want to let him get to bed. But we wanted to bring him in, and we was happy that he reached out to us because now we have a different experience. Because I think because he's South African. And he's living in China.
Right.
So let's bring him on now.
Hello, everyone. All right. Thank you guys so much, Derek J. and Craig, for hosting this. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, I think it's really awesome and powerful, particularly during this time of COVID. So thank you guys so much for that. And I do love that you decided to call this Silence the Shame, because, silence will literally kill you. And it literally kills so much in the community, right? And it's also interesting that shame is also one of the determining factors in escalating mental illness, right? Is that the shame is actually going to dig your grave deeper than what you want. So dealing with the silence and the shame, I think, are kind of the first things that you can do in order to move forward and get help. So I grew up in South Africa. The interesting thing about South Africa, though, is that, particularly in the LGBTQ sense, we've had gay marriage since 1995. We were really ahead of the curve. The girls were voguing, the girls were getting married, the girls were jumping the brooms. It was a really celebratory time, especially when Nelson Mandela came out of prison. So you would think that because of such constitutional allowances, you would have a community that absolutely loves gay people and would absolutely want to accept them. But actually, I didn't find that growing up, right? So I grew up with a lot of bullying. Not too much, because I was a loud bitch. Um, but we all got bullied. I mean, it's the kind of typical story that you go through. And I love what you had to say, Craig, about the magical thinking, about feeling like maybe you can somehow obfuscate the discrimination that you're experiencing by thinking of yourself as doing more. And so what I did in school was I was just like, I'm just going to focus on school and I'm going to try and do well and F everybody, right? But that kind of magical thinking that pushed me was also dangerous because it started to build walls between me and people, because I was always on the receiving end of a lot of remarks and a lot of stuff like that. I mean, it eventually went to America to go study in the States, and I feel like that's where I experienced anxiety in a very physical way that I'd never experienced before. And I mean, it was crazy. Like, there was one day I was sitting, and university was a time when I was truly out. My pink feathers were all the way out, but I had not spoken to my family about it. Not really, right? And I remember one day I felt like my heart stopped, like literally stopped. And I was rushed to the emergency. And the diagnosis was, you were going through like a psychotic break. It had nothing to do with your heart, but your nerves were so tense that you were going through like some sort of panic attack, right? And it's so interesting that, especially I find in the Black community, it takes us the most extreme thing that could ever happen to you for you to seek help. And I think this is clear also between the Black American and African families. There's something about our bodies, right, that we cherish after legacies of colonialism, slavery. There are ways that we kind of don't want to give ourselves up to be healed in certain ways with our bodies. But yeah, I mean, it almost killed me. I'm fine now, but it's kind of always going to peek its head, and you always kind of have to check it. And you can put in strategies in place. I like what the therapist had to say about creating good habits for yourself, and also recognizing and being honest with yourself about when you're losing control, right? And you kind of ringing the alarm first.
Now, did you seek any help to help you work through this?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Like, I did therapy when I was in the States, and then it kind of like, now I'm good and I know what strategies to do when I'm experiencing a lot of anxiety. But this brings another problem. I was fortunate to kind of learn that language when I was in the States and in a liberal arts college where that was a huge buzzword, right? And so what do international communities do who might not have those languages and that vocabulary to deal with it, right? And I think this is kind of similar to the African American community, but the Black culture, particularly in my African culture, that interacts with a religious perspective like Christianity, I think it further cements silence. Yeah, especially a religion like Christianity, which is predicated on the saviorhood, right? Of like, Jesus saved, and if Jesus woke up from the dead and you just feel a little nervous, like, what's wrong with you, right? Like that idea. And so there's the Black culture that interacts with religion, but I think also there's this idea of pride as well that a lot of African cultures have. We're like proudful people, and I think a lot of the silence also comes from there. There's a pride of history, of having been colonized and then no longer being colonized. But there's also like just an internal psychic pride that Africans have that kind of may create more silence in them. And it's been interesting to see the difference between Africa and now living in China.
MC, thank you so much for your input and your insight. If you're tired, you can go ahead and go to bed because we know.
I was just joking.
Oh, okay. We're gonna drop you back down, okay?
All right.
And we're gonna bring our next guest up. Which my eyes is bad.
You want to do Shakita?
Shakita.
Okay, so
Hey,
Shakita.
Shakita, how are you?
Hi guys, I'm fine. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. So
Oh,
talk
let me get.
about your experience with mental health.
Okay, let me get straight. So, as I was listening to the therapist and the young man that spoke, something that stood out to me is my depression stems from trauma that stemmed in my childhood that I never dealt with.
Mhm.
And I'm sorry, I'm trying to be centered. Okay,
Are you good?
I was trying to figure out. I've been through so many things. I wanted to address, I guess, tonight, where my depression. Oh, bless you.
Thank you. It's
Where
not
my where my depression started. So, I was born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland, and my grandparents raised me. My mother had me when she was 14, and she was she wanted to party, so she left the baby with her parents to raise, and they raised me in a I had a Christian upbringing. My grandparents were very much involved in my life. They were both one my grandmother Eastern Star, my grandfather was a Mason, so I had a pretty good upbringing, but I still had relationships with my birth mother and my birth father. Well, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. The man that's listed on my birth certificate as my father, I still had a relationship with them. So I would see them. And when I was about 16, he molested me. Um, and I was afraid to tell anybody. My grandmother was one of those grandmamas from the South, now living in the city, standing in the screen door, her rollers yelling your name down the street. She was feisty, and I was afraid of what she might do, to him. And for me to be 16 and worrying, why was I worried about, him and not myself? So I kept that with me for a very long time, and I didn't tell anybody, nobody. I'm 40 years old now, and I'm just starting to. I actually had a breakthrough a couple years ago. So it's basically messed up every relationship that I've had in my life, romantically, as a mom, as a friend, anything, because I adapt a coping mechanism where I would shut people out. So whenever something, and I don't even know sometimes what it is exactly that triggers me, when I'm dealing with certain people, a lot of times if they trigger something, I guess that happened to me around that trauma, that makes me push them away. And I really push away, like cut you off. I'm not talking to you, but we were talking, for weeks. But it's because something was triggered in me, and because I hadn't healed and dealt with my trauma, I wonder, who was I even really? I feel like I was floating above a cloud through my life, just watching everything happen, and was taking care of everybody else but myself. So I had a breakthrough moment. Let's fast forward, it's about 3 years ago, and I was to the point where my depression had gotten so bad, and it was never treated. I forgot to mention that it was never treated. I never went to therapy. I never took medications, anything. I just suppressed this terrible thing that happened to me, and then just to have to try to deal with that on your own, it's crazy. But it has ruined, all my relationships, and people don't understand sometimes, and they think it's them. It's always, well, what can I do to help, or how can I make it better, or why don't you want to talk to me, or why don't you want to spend time with me? And sometimes when a person is going through something and they tell you, that they need space, or maybe they need just some time to themselves, it's not always about something negative. Depression is a real thing. And one day I got to the point where I was in the room, just me and the four walls, and I fell to my knees crying. And I said, I'm tired. I'm tired. I'm 38 years old. I'm tired. Tired of being depressed. I'm tired of letting this negative energy that this man is not even worth, he's ruined my life.
Mhm.
And I had to take responsibility for myself and my feelings and understanding it wasn't my fault. Now, for me, I did go to therapy. Didn't quite work for me. Because after I would tell all my stories, the therapist a lot of times would be in awe. They would be like, "Are you kidding me? Like, you've been through so much. I'm surprised that you're still sitting here. You know, you're have a very calm demeanor." And it just wasn't working out because it turned into story sessions. It seemed like I was just going into all of these traumatic experiences that I've had, and the person was just like, it just didn't work. And maybe it just wasn't the right therapist. Every therapist is not right for everyone. So the breakthrough moment for me, right now, I'm going through my spiritual journey. I don't know why I kind of gravitated more towards, meditating and just really trying to get to the core of why am I like this? And why am I pushing away people, that love me, care about me, and want to be there for me, but I won't allow them to. And it was because I hadn't dealt with that trauma, and I had to let that go, forgive myself, and I forgave him because I didn't, I held on to that for a long time, and I don't speak to him, but I had to let it go. I released it, to the universe. I wrote it down. That day, me to four walls. I'm on my knees crying. I said I'm done. I don't want to deal with this anymore. I want to let it go. I forgive him. I hope he finds peace with himself. And I said a lot of other things, and I really meant it. And I took the paper, I wiped my tears, I tore it up, I put it in a dish, and I burned it. And I walked outside that day. It was a beautiful day. I'll never forget. And I tossed it. I tossed it over the grass. And as I walked away, I said, I'm done with it. I'm letting it go. And ever since that day, I'm still struggling, but meditating and just working on my inner self and figuring out who I really am has helped me. And the past year, I did decide to take antidepressant, which I was against for a long time, just because of my, I was just uneducated about it, because like we said, we don't talk about it. And when you're younger, in our I feel like our Black family is what happens in my house stays in my house, and things like that kind of makes you back in when I was 16, it deters you from opening up sometimes. And so that's just a little bit.
No, thank you so much for sharing your story and your experience and how you worked through it.
It was hard.
Taking a different path to
It
work.
was very hard. And I just want, if anything tonight, I just want people to know that sometimes you have to face some hard things, some hurtful things that you have to dig deep and deal with them and let them go, because if not, you won't be free. You won't be able to be yourself. And it's a trickle of things, if it affects everything then. Because I feel like I failed my kids sometimes because I was depressed. I took care of them and I gave them what they needed, but emotionally I feel like I was absent. And so I'm dealing through a lot, but it's getting better every day. And
Okay.
Thank you. And thank you guys for again for having me. And thank you, Craig, for responding to me. Craig responded every DM I sent him.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I wanted to say, she said a lot of things that I thought were just amazing. One, I thought it was really special that she explored meditation. Just to kind of center herself and to calm herself. Now, I'm not a therapist at all, but when she was talking about how she's had every relationship has been destroyed as a result, what I would suggest, and again, I'm not a therapist, is that if you just look at each of those relationships and try to find the commonality, because she said she wasn't really sure what triggered her to pull back and to put that wall up, because that's a defense mechanism. That's basically herself trying to self-protect. So I would suggest try to write those names down of those people and figure out, if you can, what those commonalities were. And this is a very different situation. But I remember when I was caught in a dating pattern. I was dating the same kind of guy, and I couldn't figure it out until I wrote their names down. They looked nothing alike, but they had similar situations, similar qualities. But yeah, I thought that was amazing what she said. We're gonna go to, is that Larnica?
Larnica. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Yes.
You're licensed.
I'm doing well.
Yeah. What's your title?
I'm a licensed professional counselor.
Yes.
So you've been hearing these stories. You've been hearing people their experience of what they've been going through. What could you add to this conversation to kind of help people be able to, realize that they are going through something and that they need to kind of seek some help?
Basically, if you can observe a difference within yourselves, a shift, what is going on? Am I my regular self? What's the difference? What's different with me? My particular experience, I noticed something was going on with me. I've been diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. When I developed a phobia, I didn't know what anxiety was. I wasn't a therapist yet. I was in school to be a therapist, and I was dealing with a lot of stress at church, stress at home, relationship stress, and trying to deal with being my authentic self, where I noticed I was having stomach issues. And I thought, well, maybe I'm having reflux. Maybe I had my gallbladder taken out a couple years prior to that. Maybe that's what's going on. And I went to my doctor, like, okay, give me some Nexium or something, because I don't know what this is. And she told me, oh, you're stressed. I'm like, I'm stressed. Okay, so then I noticed that I'm not eating, I'm not socializing much anymore. And I come to the realization, okay, something is wrong. And as a counseling student, I was able to talk with my professor, and she was like, okay, sounds like anxiety. You need to see a therapist. And I'm like, as a therapist, how can I see a therapist? And so she said, that's what we do. It is helpful. If you have experienced some things in your life, it helps you to better help your clients. So if you recognize something is different, family members may tell you, hey, something going on with you. Those are some signs. If you're not sleeping, you're not eating, you're eating more. COVID has done a thing, to everybody. Seek help. We try to look at WebMD, and we try to look at all these other things to self-diagnose, but it wouldn't hurt to talk to someone. Talk to your primary care physician first. Hopefully they will refer you to therapy or even to a psychiatrist. People are afraid to talk to psychiatrists. A psychiatrist does not mean you are at your ultimate point where you're psychotic. That is a specialist. The same way, if I have heart problems, I'll talk to a cardiologist. If I'm having some mental health issue, if I know that I just don't feel right, my body, my thoughts, I'm just not being myself, they can do an evaluation on you to determine what's going on, if it's something that'll require medication, is it circumstantial, but also seek a talk therapist as well.
And part of the reason that I wanted to have you on was because when I got your email and you said that you're a licensed professional counselor, I said, this is, and you wrote about your actual experiences. I thought that was so profound because oftentimes we don't think about healers needing help.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so I just thought it was important to have you on here, not just as an SME, a subject matter expert, but as somebody who could really speak to it, from a professional standpoint and from a personal.
Definitely. With COVID, I recognized here lately that I was dealing with depression. I'm a licensed professional counselor, and I'm a behavioral mental health counselor at a public school. So I work in education, and I have a private practice. And we've moved to the virtual education, virtual counseling in the school setting. And I was irritated. I just wanted to lay down all the time. I found myself consuming alcohol a little bit more than what I would normally do for me, and I had to take a step back. I'm like, okay, Larnica, something's going on. My sister even commented, okay, what's going on with you? My mood changed. I was able to observe my mood changing. And I had to gather myself, calm myself down. I do have a therapist. So I was able to consult my therapist and talk with her about some things. And those are things I know. I know coping techniques. I know what you need to do. But sometimes it helps to hear it from somebody else, from a colleague, from another professional. When you're going through some things, to tell you as the helper, it's okay to take some time for yourself. I really promote and advocate for self-care. I had to take some time. I had to take some time to myself to reflect, to rejuvenate, because how can I help other people if I'm just drained and burned out? So yeah, I thought as a therapist, oh Lord, who's going to want to see me if I'm having my own issues? But I'm human. We all are. We have different issues that occur in life, and it's okay.
No, I would say, Nanika, thank you so much. We're gonna bring you back up for your final thoughts.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, darling.
Thank you.
And she brought up a really good point too. Oh, actually, I think I was reading in the comments. Where's her? Oh, here she is. Somebody said in the comments about those out-of-pocket fees are very expensive. Oftentimes, depending on your health insurance, they will cover that. You'll have to pay, a copay. But again, it depends on your health insurance.
Okay. We're about to get ready to bring our next guest up.
Rachel?
My eyes are so child.
I'm gonna take you to my place.
This light's so bright.
Hey y'all.
Hello, how are you?
Surgery.
Hey gorgeous. Hey Craig.
Hey Rachel. So you want to share with us?
That was Yeah, so it basically starting from my childhood, I just had trauma all the way up until a young adult, with my parents, my partners. Yeah, my parents were like both thugs, dangerous, and just there were many times I felt my life was gonna end. And my body shakes as I'm talking about this, but it just does that every time I revisit this stuff. And like one of them said earlier, pay attention to your body. It really does let you know, like if you're feeling, anxious or whatnot. But yeah, I just had negative behavior because of it. Like I felt like I was turning into my parents, and that scared me. So yeah, I just sought like biblical help at first. But still, like I just couldn't hold a job. Like even as of now, I don't really have a job actually. I do little things that I can to make my money here and there, but um and I dropped out of college. I know that's I was suicidal. I isolated myself from everybody. Um I got married. I even isolated myself from my wife, and I left her because she was just like getting to the point where she was just the last person, and it was just falling apart. I was just coming to a really dark place in my life. And yeah, I'm homosexual. I've been homosexual. I just thought, I'm gonna go the biblical route. Maybe that'll work. But I met my wife at church, and actually, she was just my best friend. We fell in love. Long story short, and I still love her because she's just been with me to this day, just helping me through this journey. And it was when we separated when I was really just like, she said, we just need to see a doctor, because um no offense, the prayer's not working, um and I was really just going through like mountainous swings of depression. I mean, that's the best way I can describe it. So when I went to the doctor, they diagnosed me. They did my intake. They interviewed me, asked a bunch of questions. They wanted to find out what was wrong. So I could just, again, my entire body was just shaking in that first instant. It was hard to revisit all those things. I know a lot of people don't want to seek the help and talk about it because they just don't want to revisit this stuff. But you really do have to go to that dark place sometimes to come into a place of light. And for me, it happened almost instantly because like they set me up with treatment. I went to CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, which is like group therapy. They gave me a therapist, and they even gave me a psychiatrist so I can take meds because I was having I had insomnia, I couldn't sleep. So they gave me meds for that, for depression. Um, and the doctors were really good, actually. They work with you. Like my doctor, I was really hesitant with meds at first. I was scared. I had a brother who took Ritalin, and he developed tics. I was just afraid of medicine, but the doctors were very understanding. They they want you to be comfortable taking the meds, and it took me about 2 months to be comfortable to take meds. I finally did it though. Um, they were helping, and I would check in with my doctor, and they would ask me, any side effects. So they're really there to just make sure that these meds don't do you any harm. And I mean, that should eliminate a lot of people's fears when it comes to that. But then, yeah, I did my group therapy was really cool. It really helped me just identify a bunch of negative thinking and how it kind of leads to negative behavior. I believe I was in like group therapy for 3 months. And they mentioned to me, because I had PTSD, they mentioned that, if you with PTSD, you still have to work with your trauma. The group, it will only kind of help the surface of things. So, unfortunately with that, you still have to work with it. And like I've accepted the fact that I may never be cured of it. That was hard to come to terms with. But even now, I feel like with the tools that I have, like I'm still just thriving, even though like occasionally I have an episode. Um, and so just like you just get taught how to look at good news in your personal life and around the world. They taught me how to just do that on a weekly basis, because we just get so much, like if you watch television, you watch the news, a lot of it is negative stuff. So all that's coming in, like I had to learn how to take in good news, positive news, you know?
So how are you now today?
Today, um, like now I can listen to my body. If my body's like, if I start to get itchy, like my body will warn me if like I'm about to have an episode. Um, and I just feel like now, like I have a lot of tools that they've given me. Like I can positive self-talk myself out of things sometimes, you
Mhm.
know. Um, I know somebody mentioned something about too blessed to be stressed. That's not an answer. I know that's not an answer, but it's more like of a positive affirmation, I guess, or a self-talk. It's not really like you don't say that to somebody and it's more just a tool, if anything. It's not the answer. But now like my environment, like I've learned to make sure like I have a clutter free space in my home where my brain can just relax and not be, kind of like stressed out, because I just even I lose energy. I have to make sure like my sleep schedule's right. I have to make sure that I'm eating right, exercising, like all these things that I've learned. Like I have a mantra, and that really helps me actually. Um, it's a Bible verse, Philippians 4:8. Whatever is good, pure, focus on these things. So like that's kind of like my mantra now. If I'm dealing with something difficult, I try to just think of the good news, the positive, what's true, what isn't, And a lot of times in my anxiety, I've created stuff in my head that's not really there. They're like called cognitive distortions. And I've like my biggest one I do is mind reading. I think I know what people are thinking, like Craig, that look on Craig's face, he's reading me to filth right now, but he really ain't. Or maybe he is, I don't know. But I'm mind reading. So that's like I've learned to identify it. Normally I'd be like, I'm like that, Craig, that look on his face. No. Like, but no, I'm not. I've learned to kind of just take control of every thought that just kind of tries to become distorted. So yeah, I mean, like now it's great. I just finished my first year of college. Praise God, like I could not have done that. I mean, I was a dropout, and I did it with flying colors. I just finished my first year. I'm going to continue to go on, and I haven't been to my therapist. She kind of just said, "Well, you're good, bro. Like, just call me if you need me." So it's been 4 years that I've been on this journey of seeing a therapist, seeing a psychiatrist. Um, and it's not over. Like, there will be a time I still get triggered, and I mess up, but my therapist is there.
Well, the best thing about it is that you do recognize that and you understand that those are things you still need to work on. And I want to tell you, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your story with us. We're going to bring you back up for some final thoughts, okay?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
I saw in the comments a lot of people were saying about watching the news and it triggering depression. I would offer that oftentimes it's important to pull yourself off of social media, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, because you can push yourself into a depression because you're busy comparing yourself to other people. You're comparing because it's an illusion. A lot of times people are creating these stories about themselves on social media, and then you're thinking that you're further behind them than you actually are, and for your own mental wellness.
And for me, I try to follow as less people as I have to. I try to keep
my. You barely want to follow me.
I
on
barely
Instagram.
want to follow Craig. So I try to keep it a clean.
What's your number?
150. I'm over it right now. I am over it by 5 people.
He doesn't want to follow more than 150 people.
Because I need people. I need people to. Make me feel good.
Pour
it to me. And if you're not pouring into me, and then plus I follow Craig on Facebook too and on Instagram. I can't follow you on everything now, Craig. Jesus. And on Twitter. But let's go to our last participant of the panel. Hello.
How do you say your name? Is it Jermaine?
Jermaine.
Okay.
Yes. How are you tonight?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you for being here.
Yes,
thank you for being patient with us also.
Thank you.
So talk to us about your experience with mental health.
Okay, so I was diagnosed with bipolar depression. And like pretty much everybody on the panel, it was a traumatic experience that happened in my life that took a toll on me, which my mother died when I was 18. She actually passed away in my arms. And that was something that I struggled with for years. I tried to mask it by being the life of the party. But that comes with some of the symptoms of being bipolar depressed, hopelessness, reckless behavior. I went through a lot of that. But then I took a look back on my journey throughout my life, and I realized it started at a younger age. I came out when I was 15 years old. And I think the reason for me coming out at that young age was because I was depressed. I was tired of crying myself to sleep at night, what my family would say if they found out. It was a lot of different things. I did notice after my mother passed, it got really bad, to the point where it actually started to affect my work, my social life. I withdrew from family and friends. I didn't want to do any type of activities. I didn't want to, I had like low energy, low motivation. So those were some signs that actually got me to do some research and get some help. So what I did was I did a lot of research before I actually spoke with my physician. And it's real easy to get help, because I know every time I go in for an appointment, they have me fill out a survey for your mental health. They ask you questions like, do you feel like committing suicide? Do you feel like that you have hopelessness? And a lot of those were check marks for me. That made me realize, hey, this is not just something that's going to go away by itself. And that's what I was hoping. I was scared. I didn't want to go get treatment. You hear a lot of things about receiving the treatment that it will do more harm than good. And in some cases, it will. The first time I was diagnosed with depression, and I was on the medication. I took it for probably about 2 years, and I let my doctor know. I said I still feel the same. I don't want to get out of bed. Um, my eating habits definitely changed. I was so depressed, I ate my feelings. Um, so they said, well, let's send you to a specialist. So they sent me to a specialist. The specialist diagnosed me with bipolar depression, um, put me on medication. So I am currently on medication for that now, since the misdiagnosis. And I'm just waiting for that to take effect. It's only been about 5 months. So, with the COVID-19 and everything going on, it still flares up every now and then. I still have a tendency to sleep a lot. And that's a real big sign. Um, and I also just wanted to say a lot of people need to actually pay attention to those signs because the stigma around it is what's keeping us from actually having that check. Like I said, I didn't think I needed it. I didn't want the treatment.
I really wasn't gonna share a whole lot because I really wanted it to be open for you guys. But one of the symptoms of my functional depression was anonymous sex. And I talk about that in Words Never Spoken, the first book. And for me, once I got to the root of why I was doing it, I was able to stop doing it. I was able to suppress it. And so what triggered me to want to say that was because you were saying that you were eating. And so I wish, as we're wrapping up, I want to kind of go around again in your closing statements and kind of share with us if there were symptoms of your depression, because again, or whatever your mental health issue was. For me, it was like I was in such a low place. And this was before Jacked and any of the mobile apps. This is when you were home on your computer. I would oftentimes confine myself, and I'm not going to overshare because again, I've already written and you can read it in the book, but I would confine myself to home. Like friends would say, well, hey, let's meet for drinks or let's go grab a bite to eat. And I would a lot of times say no, because I wanted to be home at the computer because there was something about that validation that came through those messages from perfect strangers. It kind of lifted me. It lifted my spirit for a moment. It pacified me. And so I would stay home. I sequestered myself. And there were times that I would wake up and I'd be at the computer all day. And by the time I look outside, the sun was going down. And I had been at the computer all day. I didn't always hook up, but I was on that. I was addicted to the computer. I was addicted to the messages.
The feedback, right.
Now, how old were you when you realized that you needed to get some help?
I was 30 going on 31.
Okay.
Like I said, it was up and down. I would go to work. I would just cry for no reason. I'm very thankful for my GMs and my managers because they saw the signs and they actually pushed me to get help. Because I would just cry for no reason at work. They were like, why are you crying? And I couldn't tell them why I was crying because I didn't know. That's a scary feeling.
Okay. So we're gonna drop you back down. We're gonna get your final thoughts, okay?
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you.
And so we're gonna leave our two mental health professionals for last.
Right.
And we'll do our round.
And see this question here for the mental health professionals that are here. Please take a look at that question right there because I really want you guys to kind of answer that since you guys are the subject matter experts here. And it's a great question. How do we not confuse being an introvert versus being depressed?
So we're gonna come around. We're gonna come around to everyone to get your last thoughts. We're gonna start with you, MC. So, MC, if you could leave everybody with something, what would you want to leave them with from this conversation?
I mean, what I would leave them with is, y'all, we're all going through it. Coronavirus has really brought us through this very intense time for us. We also see the killing of Black bodies right now that's happening in the States. And so we're really under a lot of pressure, but I think the only thing I could say is try and stay positive, try and notice your habits, and try your best to reach out. And that's really the best thing that you could do. And it's knowing that deep inside you have strength. However, you should also try and get a diagnosis in order to make sure that you're okay. But thank you so much for the great conversation, and
Thank you.
I love you all.
Thank you so much for being a part of it. Thank you, MC.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Craig.
All right, be safe.
Bye.
Okay, Rachel.
So there's this analogy I wanted to share with you guys. And it's like, I call it the pillow analogy, but basically, like, if you don't seek treatment and you don't know if you're dealing with any mental illness, you could be fit, you could have it all together, whatever. I mean, just imagine putting a stack of heavy books on a pillow. You know, over time, that pillow is going to stay flat. Now, if you deal with that issue and you take those stack of heavy weights off that pillow right away, okay, the pillow's going to kind of come back to its shape, right? But if you leave that stuff on that pillow for a long period of time and you never deal with it, when you eventually deal with it and you take that weight off, that pillow's going to it's going to be hard to get back to where it was. You know, it's going to take time. So I encourage people to deal, you know, if you even think for a second, maybe you're dealing with something, seek a professional. And just one more thing too, I think it's important. Women have a chemical in their brain where they actually take on more depression than men, more anxiety. So women, that's also something to think about, you know. It's so important to just take care of your mental health. And I would just urge you, don't be ashamed, don't be afraid. You may have to go into a very difficult start of it when you know, talk to somebody about it, but I'm telling you, come out of that side better and just more aware of yourself. And yeah,
Thank you so much for your insight.
of course. Thank you for having me.
Okay, Mark.
Yo, what's up? I wrote down something. This is what I said. Sometimes, like, people sometimes are on the fence with therapists, and the reason I would advocate to get a therapist is because you're paying someone not to flip the conversation on you. Friends are great to talk to, but you know, you talk to your friends sometimes, and before you know it, the conversation is about them. It's about what they're experiencing. Oh, child, if I was you, I would have did. And now the conversation has went away from your pain, from your anxiety, from your depression, from your moment, and now it's theirs. Now they mean well, but they're not there to just be your all in all. So you're paying a therapist to not flip the conversation on you and to keep it directly on your problems, your situation, so that you can talk it through and get out whatever you need to get out. So that's why I advocate for people to get therapists. And plus, you know, sometimes you can weigh down your friends. You know, they say, call me whenever you need me. I'm always there. And that's true to an extent. But after a few phone calls with the same issues or the same experiences, your friends are going to get tired, you know, so you're paying a therapist to be there, a solid foundation for you to get out everything that you need to get out. So that's what I wanted to leave you guys with.
All right,
Thank you so much. I appreciate you participating.
No problem.
All right.
Chiquita, we're coming back to you, darling. And what will be your last thoughts to leave people with?
I think from listening to you know, everyone that was on the panel tonight, I would just like to tell whoever's listening or whoever it's for. I like this quote by Jim Carrey that says, he says, the word depressed, use it as deep rest, because I do feel like everything that I went through was meant to happen to me, so that I could be in front of you guys today. You know, and I have a lot more to share, but to share my experiences and share the stories that I've been through, so that maybe I can help just one person not get to 40 before you really realize and hone in on who you really are.
Right.
So I just encourage anyone dealing with anything to reach out to whoever you can. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes you don't always have someone that you feel like you can talk to, and people don't feel comfortable sometimes talking to a stranger. So it's a lot that goes into seeking help for treatment. But if you put yourself first and know that you come before anything, and if you have to protect your energy by any means, please do so, because this pandemic has showed us a lot, and it's brought a lot of us together. So I think that this is our time to wake up and be who we were meant to be authentically, and not apologize for it. Because I've never experienced anything like this pandemic. So probably the next one, we won't be here. So we need to take advantage of our lives now.
Thank you, Shakita. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Oh, I don't know if I can. I'm not gonna, if I can do this. It was a couple comments of people wanting to know how to get in contact with me.
Oh yeah.
You can type it in. You can type it in the.
You see the chat? You see the chat on the side?
Yeah.
Okay, just type it over there in the chat so they'll see it, so they'll get it.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if I could comment or not. All right, thank you.
All right,
Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.
Of course. Over to him.
Yeah.
Okay. Jermaine?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And your final thoughts?
My final thoughts are, if you have any family members, friends, anyone out there that you see the signs that are going through depression, I urge them to speak with them, try to get them help. Me being a part of the LGBT community, we are at a higher rate of suicide than our heterosexual partners. So we need to do our jobs more diligently to get that taken care of.
Okay. Thank you so much, Jermaine.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate it. We freezing?
Can we freeze? Oh no.
Oh, no.
Okay. There we go. So then scroll on up.
It's this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jawanda?
Yes, hey.
Hey. So
I want to hear your final thoughts, but did you see that question also? If you have an answer.
Absolutely. Yeah, sure did. So like introvert versus an extrovert, I think about it as really a personality characteristic. It is your static way of being. So people who are introverted, they prefer to be alone. That renews them, that rejuvenates them, as opposed to an extrovert who needs that audience, who needs to feed off of other people's energy. It's just the way that it's your personality. Now, being depressed is not part of your personality. That is a disruption in your personality. So those are the key things there. And you really have to gauge that. Everybody has to gauge that for themselves. But just to kind of wrap up, really appreciate all the guests. They had some wonderful stories to tell. Mental health is a journey for everyone. It's going to look different. First thing you need to do is address the unhealed wounds that you have. And a lot of us have those residual traumas and what have you that we're still operating off of. But that's going to look different. I got into mental health because I knew something was wrong around me and with some people but I didn't know what to call it. I didn't literally have the words. I didn't know that this was depression. This is anxiety. This is bipolar. This is borderline personality. We didn't even get into that. But Craig, you hit on that a little bit. Whether you know how to cope effectively or not, you're going to cope. Whether it's drugs, sex, food, or meditation, mindfulness, and all of those things, you're going to figure out some kind of way. So what we need to understand is it's okay to be present. It's okay to feel. Mindfulness allows us to slow down and to actually feel. And a lot of times with anxiety, we don't want to feel, so we eat. We don't want to feel, so we drink. We don't want to feel, so we use drugs. We don't want to feel. So, it's okay. I think some of that is derivative of slavery. You touched on that, and some of those other things, because it was not okay to feel. You couldn't lay down. You couldn't, you didn't have the luxury of those things. But at the end of the day, reach out, get help, talk about it. It starts with words. What we say becomes what we think, becomes what we do. So that's the key there. Start to talk about it, reach out to people. Don't wait until there's a law enforcement issue or there's some other, negative thing that happens that pulls you into some type of treatment or services. So I thank you guys so much for having me on. Yeah, and that's
Thank
what I
you
got.
so much.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
thank you.
And while we're moving to the last, was it the last person?
Yep.
Remember, guys, the website for Shanti Dawes' organization is silencetheshame.com.
Mm-hmm.
It's a wealth of information over there and resources over there. And if you want to simply donate, you can do that over there as well.
Mm-hmm. And last but not least, Malika.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
as mentioned before, with being an introvert versus depression, how do you know you're not depressed? Being an introvert, you typically enjoy your own company. As the panelists before mentioned, it's a personality trait as far as being an introvert versus an extrovert. Signs and symptoms of depression: withdrawal, social isolation, loss of appetite, maybe eating too much, maybe self-injurious behaviors, like as you mentioned with the being online, with the sexual addictions and things that you had there. Feelings of worthlessness. It's a mood disorder. So some days you might be okay, I'm good. And some days that mood may go down. You may have periods of time where you're in that lower mood, but it's good to have these conversations. It's good to ask questions. Many of us have social media platforms. If you have a question or concern about mental health disorders versus is this just me, what's going on, look us all up. You can check me out, Lornika Lavlas, LPC, PLLC on Instagram, Facebook, www.lavlaslpc.com. But more conversations are needed. I really, really appreciate that. Get help. We have to help ourselves. No one else is going to help us. No one else is going to say, hey, you little people of color, y'all got some stuff going on. Go and get some help. We have to reach out and help our community.
Yes, we do. Thank you so much, Monica.
Thank you. Thank you.
So much. Oh my God.
This is an informative conversation today. I learned a lot.
I did too.
And like I said, I appreciate everyone that was here to be able to share their stories with us. And thank you. Because it took a lot to be vulnerable and to be able to speak your truth. And thank you for our professionals to be able to have the information there to share with us.
And please use this information that you've learned. Don't just absorb it, but then also share it. Share it with your friends, your family, your network. Share it on your social media. It's the reason that we did this conversation. It's not just for those of you that viewed us live. We want this to be an ongoing conversation, and that's why we're doing all of these. Did that shit end?
Craig's stuff is horrible.
Look.
Craig's stuff. We was having a good conversation.
Look,
Craig's internet is trash.
It's not the internet. I really think I'm gonna tell you what I think it is. I think it's the laptop. I think I need a new Mac. So listen.
So before we get out of here, make sure y'all look at silencetheshame.com. We put all the information in both of our comments. Donate, like you said, $1 could go a long way. So just donate $1. And thank you to all our panelists. Thank you for everybody that was here watching with us. And
if you want to support the kid and get in a brand new Mac, go ahead and hit that cash app.
Cash app here, please.
I'm looking for a new computer tomorrow. But anyway. anyway, thank you for being here next Wednesday. Remember, we're going to be here next Wednesday at 9 p.m. We wouldn't typically be here next week because we're here tonight, but I mean, we wouldn't have typically have been here tonight, but we wanted to add this. But next Wednesday, we're going to have a conversation with the trans community.
Yes.
So if you are a trans male or female, email us at glmconvo@gmail.com. Now, we really would like for you to email us. Tell us why you want to be a part of this conversation. There's the email address right there. Trans men and trans women. We're going to have the conversation together. Let us know why you want to be a part of this conversation. Send us a picture.
Yes. Please. Let me tell you guys, I know y'all think that we're being vain about that picture thing.
That's not it.
That's not it. We need to see who we're talking to.
Right.
So send us a picture. Send us your contact information, meaning a phone number. Not just your email address, because you're emailing us. That's why we got your email address.
Right.
Send us a phone number, a picture, and a brief paragraph about how you can add to the conversation.
Right. And we're going to be choosing the people for this panel within this weekend.
Yes, we have
because
no
we're
choice.
having it
On Wednesday.
All right. So, and I plan to have. Well, we're going to be at Derek's house next week.
Yes,
but I'm getting a new Mac.
Thank you guys so much, and for another great conversation. I'm glad you guys were here to have it with us. We will see you guys next week, Wednesday.
All right. We appreciate you guys. Bye. Oh my God.